In this video, I'm going to be presenting arguments as to why, possibly, Bethesda may well be walking the path of damnation with reference to their status as a AAA company and with reference to their future as a reliable AAA company that we all like and appreciate. Now, there's much to be talked about, and this is related to my fairly recent previous video where I talked about my wants, wishes, and whims with reference to the next Elder Scrolls title, whenever that comes out, when I'm a foot in the grave, presumably. But before I actually get to the meat of the argument and the arguments I'm going to make, it'd probably be best to mention what it is I'm going to be talking about in the first place by referencing the article itself and reading off some of its contents, and linking the low bar to the article, of course. So the title of the article, and many of you have probably heard this already, is Bethesda is working on 3 new games. And a snippet from the article tells us, but the studio's business goes further still. And this is Todd Howard, or God Howard as sometimes known, speaking. Quote, we actually have 3 kind of longer-term projects we're doing that are all, and then he trails off, we'll talk about them at a future date, but they're different than anything we've done before. While also being a Bethesda-style game, Howard said, before describing them as big and crazy, but in many ways different than things we've done before. It's an exciting time, end quote. Now, I guess it's exciting for them, but the core argument I'm going to make is that Bethesda is possibly, and I don't know for sure, making the mistake of overextending themselves. People can overextend themselves, and so can companies. Countries can too, with, for example, the United States' ridiculous interventionist foreign policy. Totally separate issue, but it's an example of a country overextending itself. The Roman Empire overextended itself. And people, individuals, can take on too much work, and they can't accomplish it all. Now, we know this can happen with companies because we have some very good examples of so-called AAA companies that have done this. Now, the first company that comes to mind when I talk about game developers overextending themselves is Ubisoft, whom I like to refer to as UB shit. Now, I don't talk about this much because it's a bit depressing, but I did in fact sink a fair amount of hours into the game The Division, Tom Clancy's The Division, the first and presumably last MMO I have ever played. The game is deeply flawed. Tons of glitchers, hackers, it's a mess. But because I bought into the hype, I pre-ordered and made that mistake. Now, Ubisoft has a panoply, an array of titles that they are constantly pumping out. I think we're on either the 10th or 11th Assassin's Creed by now, with a number of other diversion offshoots related to the Assassin's Creed IP. Then they have games like Far Cry, and they have other games such as The Division and Tom Clancy, and the list goes on and on and on and on. But what does that really tell us? Well, to me, it tells me that they're not particularly focused. There was another Ubisoft game I used to play quite a bit, a PvP shooter called Ghost Recon Phantoms. And one day, they just got up and left. What do I mean by that? Well, quite literally, they got up and left. There was no support on the forums, no announcement, no nothing. They just left, and left the game intact online, I guess, so people could buy some stuff and they could still turn a profit. I've learned my lesson now, particularly with reference to Ubi shit. I'm deeply suspicious of anything Ubisoft publishes or develops now. And it's pretty obvious when you look at something like Assassin's Creed and all maybe the 20 titles related to it now. They're just looking at it as a cash cow, and that's fine. But by overextending themselves, by not sticking to 1 or 2 IPs, by not becoming focused developers, Ubisoft has done itself a disservice. They're known for putting out games that are sort of mildly fun that you play once or maybe don't even complete. But the important thing is they got your money because you might have been foolish, like I was, and you pre-ordered. Okay, fair enough. As the great George W. Bush Jr., the second after the first, said, fool me once, fool me twice, or however else he said it, I forgot. It's not going to happen again. But I have a deep concern regarding companies that I actually respect and think are overall pretty good, and Bethesda still counts among them, to my mind. They might be moving away from that status in my eyes, but I think overall they're still pretty good. There are 2 companies that I can think of off the top of my head, and some others that are more indie They're really good. As far as AAA companies are concerned, CD Projekt Red, and I'll get into the reasons for that in a bit, and Bethesda still is kind of up there. But already, Fallout 4 kind of took a hit. We feel more restrictive. We are limited by certain dialogue choices. And now God Howard is talking about, 3 new IPs? You see, to me, Bethesda runs the risk of overextension. Yes, they can expand their team. They can hire new people. But and I think many other gamers feel this way, whatever type of gamer you might be, whatever type of genre of game you might be passionate about, you would like them to focus on what they are known for. There's nothing wrong with being a company or a manufacturer of some particular type of product, rather than just every product that falls under the category. Very few car or automobile developers develop every sort of automobile. Instead, they focus on 1 or 2 models. And likewise with games. I think it is excellent that thus far Bethesda has focused on Fallout and Elder Scrolls. And I would much rather see them devote all their time and energy to making the next Elder Scrolls the very best it can be. An amazing product, something that you could play for potentially thousands of hours because of the replayability and the ability to mod it, fixing all the previous shortcomings of previous titles. I would love to see that, and I think I speak for a lot of people who are passionate specifically about Elder Scrolls games. We want to be ensorcelled and ensnared and enthralled by the game and really want to come back to it. Yeah, we want that kind of addictive feeling. We don't want to play for a couple of hours or just think, oh, this is kind of fun, I can go back to it later. That's not why I'm a gamer. I mean, as far as my gaming is concerned, my gaming raison d'etre is, in fact, to get lost in that kind of world. And I think I speak for many people when I say that. But it's worrying that they're working on all these other IPs. Isn't that going to confuse them? Isn't it going to distract away from their primary task? Now, it is true that Bethesda didn't directly develop Elder Scrolls Online, but it is ultimately their baby in some sense because, well, Elder Scrolls is their baby. So that's another distracting force that takes away from the possibility of a good and forthcoming development of Elder Scrolls. And I'm, as a gamer of this particular genre, deeply concerned about this. Now, all of this is something that, frankly speaking, CD Projekt Red has not done. In fact, and I'll be posting a link to the interview, CD Projekt Red is dedicated to essentially 2 IPs at the moment. They're just about to finish up The Witcher 3 with the release of Blood and Wine, which I'm greatly looking forward to, as I assume many of you are as well, and Cyberpunk 2077. In fact, in this interview, you'll see that Martian, the founder of, and I'm butchering his with my terrible Polish pronunciation, forgive me, it's one of the languages I don't speak. Martian said in the interview, look, this is going to be essentially our baby, 2077, Cyberpunk, everything related to that. And I cannot wait for that game to come out. First off, it's CD Projekt Red. Cyberpunk, that just sounds cool. I played a little bit of the role-playing game, the pen and paper, and there's going to be more flexibility in creating characters, so you're not going to be limited just to one protagonist, as much as I love Geralt. It just sounds really, really, really promising. And I trust them. It's not faith, but I trust them because of the statements they make and because of the work and dedication they put into the products that they make. Just, great, great stuff. And I don't worry about them. And one of the reasons why I don't worry about them, frankly, is because they don't say things like, well, we're working on 3 or 4 different IPs at the same time, and, maybe, just maybe, they're going to be cool and maybe not. And hell, maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe my argumentation is completely flawed. Maybe Bethesda can pull off miracles. Maybe they're going to have 3 amazing new IPs that are going to shock and awe us, and we're all going to think, holy fucking shit, I didn't see that one coming. This is amazing. It's possible, just highly unlikely. No, I would argue that what most people who are gamers, and specifically what most people who are sort of RPG sandbox gamers want from Bethesda, are really good Fallout games and really good Elder Scroll games. Now, there's nothing in principle that says you shouldn't expand your horizons and develop other IPs, but I think at this stage of the game, it's a needless distraction from what their primary task should be, that is working on an amazing new Elder Scrolls title, single player. Getting bogged down in other work has a detrimental effect, and I think CD Projekt Red's founder pointed that out. You don't want to do too much at once. You don't want to take on too much at once. Of the several different types of work I do, I take on proofreading jobs, and sometimes I actually do scripting jobs as well, for certain channels and whatever. I could potentially, it doesn't happen too often, have 5 to 10 different of these things sent to me in a given day. I can't do all of them, so I have to pick and choose. If I'm working on a particular piece of content for a video that requires a lot of research and thought and analysis, I cannot really devote too much time to other tasks. I think that is essentially how people work, and it applies to companies too. So I'm deeply worried about Bethesda working on all these other titles. And then there were some other statements that Peter Hines had made, alluding to the possibility that the next Elder Scrolls is way, 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 way off. I mean, who knows? And we know that the 3 IPs they're working on are not Elder Scrolls, because he said that they've never done them before. So this is a worrying trend. There are many AAA companies that have just sort of gone down this path of just too many IPs. I think Ubisoft is probably the worst culprit. EA, well, it's hard to separate BioWare from EA, but, that is another thing. I think that's a problem with relation to EA and BioWare to some degree. And now I'm just thinking the only person I can really trust are sort of small companies, indie and CD Projekt Red. Now, I am currently replaying, I never finished it, I started to completely restart Pillars of Eternity by Obsidian, which is a brilliant game. It's great if you like isometric RPGs with flexibility, amazing stories, really, really interesting world. And I recently heard about this new IP, Tyranny, that sounds quite good, another isometric RPG with a completely different taste and flavor, because you essentially play a bad guy. And the only disappointment I felt hearing that is when I found out that it's only take 20 hours of gameplay. Maybe they'll expand on that. Obsidian is another company that really likes to do a certain type of game. They're focused. They're focused, and that's really all I would like to see on the part of Bethesda, and all I would like to see on just about from any company, to be focused and dedicated. And then they'll have my money, because I want to play good games like all of us gamers do. So I'm a bit worried about the future of Bethesda, and as far as gaming concerned, in a gaming sense, I would be fairly crushed if they just more or less forgot about Elder Scrolls, or they just pump it out as a quick cash cow. Because let's be honest, that's what Ubisoft has become. They're just looking for the bovine bundles, right? So pump out Division, get the quick cash, the pre-orders. Pump out Assassin's Creed 37.51, get the quick cash. And so on and so forth. It's sort of a never-ending thing. And yes, of course, I'm well aware. Every company exists to make money. That's not a surprise. We all know that. But I think you can walk the careful balance between profit margin and quality and dedication and a sense of pride in your product and still come out okay. Look what CD Projekt Red does. They're proud of their work, and rightly so. I mean, many people have used this term, and I'll use it too. Witcher 3 is a flawed masterpiece. It's an excellent, excellent, excellent game. Can you really say that about a Ubisoft game in recent years? I can't. Or BioWare, for that matter. Can't really say it for Bethesda either. Remains to be seen. So anyway, I am deeply concerned about this development. I don't know if you are. Maybe I'm just barmy and insane, and maybe there's no reason to worry about this, and Bethesda's going to pump out 3 amazing new IPs, and we can all do the Irish shindig and get drunk together. Maybe I'm wrong about that. If I am, point out the flaws in my reasoning. But I think overextension and getting too wrapped up in other projects is a very dangerous avenue to go down, and it could be potentially ruinous. And many of us who are just intense Elder Scrolls fans, be the lore, the gameplay, all of that, will be in for a shock and just a huge, huge disappointment. And that will be a sad day in gaming, I think. Fallout 4 already alludes to already portends some negative stuff in the future. But anyway, I've rambled on enough, and hopefully it wasn't too rambly. Let me know what you think in the comment section as usual. But this is a deep concern of mine. Overextension and being unfocused. Bethesda, please don't do it. If you ever come across this video of this humble, rambling, piddly small channel, please heed me and make an amazing Elder Scrolls. You will triple your sales if you do so. I'm almost certain, rather than delving into a million different caverns and seeing whether or not you can actually come out of them. That's dangerous. Everyone, thanks for listening as always, and take care. Bye-bye.